Tonight on Ukraine Today, Russian attack on Poland. At least 19 drones crossed into Polish airspace. First images of the aftermath are now online. NATO's reaction. Could Russian attack on Poland trigger Article 5? And what might follow if the alliance stays silent? Protecting the skies. Germany will provide Ukraine with Sky Ranger systems. What do we know about this air defense technology? Bloody crime in the US. An American repeat offender murdered a young Ukrainian refugee right inside a subway car under the CCTV camera. All this and more right now. Hello, my name is Volodymyr Robchun. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and let's move to the news. We begin with the most massive Russian strike in the past 4 months. And here's the important part. Russia attacked not only Ukraine, but Poland as well. Yes, Poland, a NATO country. The Russians launched 458 aerial targets, missiles and drones against peaceful cities and towns. Most were intercepted, but not all. In Ukraine, 16 missiles and 21 attack drones hit 17 locations. Civilian sites were damaged, private homes, a garment factory and other businesses. Power lines were also hit. At least one person was killed, several wounded. Poland was attacked with at least 19 drones. Our western neighbors had to suspend operations at 4 airports. Footage shows damage to a private house. According to Defense Express, Moscow had been preparing such strikes since July, using Polish and Lithuanian SIM cards inside drones. Poland had been warned. Analysts link this to the joint Russian-Belarusian drills West 2025, which begin on September 12th. By the way, Poland has already moved troops closer to the Belarusian border. So, where are we now? A NATO country, Poland, has been struck by Russian drones. Hard to believe it was an accident, more like a test. The Kremlin is checking how far it can go. The big question is, what's next? NATO's Article 5? That would mean no more calm evenings in quiet European or American towns, but a real fight against Russian evil. Or maybe an attempt to downplay it, saying, come on, it's only 19 drones, not 190. But that would mean weakness, and weakness is exactly what Putin wants. It's time to set priorities. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called the strike not an attack, but a large-scale provocation. Curious wording, eh? Meanwhile, President Zelensky said Ukraine is ready to share all data with Poland and proposed building a proper warning system and a joint European air defense shield with aircraft included. My note, large-scale Russian provocation can easily grow larger with missiles added. Meanwhile, Germany will provide Ukraine with Sky Ranger air defense systems designed specifically to counter drones. First deliveries are expected by the end of 2025. More details in the story.
The Ukrainian sky will become even stronger. One of the main threats in this war is drones, with which the terrorist state literally bombards Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure. But now, the arsenal of the defense forces will be reinforced with a weapon capable of stopping an entire swarm of drones. We're talking about the latest German air defense systems, the Sky Ranger. The contract for their delivery will be signed on September 10th at the DSEI Defense Exhibition in London. Their manufacturer, the Rheinmetall concern, stated that Ukraine will be given priority even over the Bundeswehr. This statement was not made by chance. It was a response to the largest drone attack by Russia since the beginning of the war. On the night of September 7th, the enemy launched more than 800 Shahed drones and their imitators. Ukraine withstood the blow, but it became clear. The drone war is reaching a new level. The Sky Ranger is a mobile anti-aircraft platform that can be mounted on all types of vehicles.
Each of these advanced systems can effectively cover an expansive area of 4 by 4 kilometers, completely and thoroughly clearing it of any unauthorized drones. This comprehensive coverage means that all drones encountered within this designated zone will be neutralized and rendered inoperable.
And this is not an exaggeration. In automatic mode, the system uses a cannon and high-precision A-head munitions, creating a dense cloud of submunitions around the target.
They are primarily intended to combat accordingly low-flying targets. These include UAVs, helicopters, and cruise missiles.
To destroy a single drone, usually 1 or 2 shots are enough. The high rate of fire and automatic targeting system allow the system to hit dozens of targets in a matter of seconds, making it impossible for a swarm of drones to break through the installation's kill zone. The radars operate 24/7, tracking every aerial target in a 3-dimensional projection.
The ammunition load is about 250 ready-to-fire rounds. The ammunition contains 160 tungsten pellets, each weighing 1.25 grams, with a total payload of up to 200 grams. These are the actual striking elements used to counter UAVs and other aerodynamic threats.
There are 2 versions of the system, the Sky Ranger 35 and the Sky Ranger 30. The first is equipped with a 35mm revolver cannon with automatic targeting, which can elevate up to 85 degrees and rotate 360 degrees. The effective firing range reaches up to 4 kilometers, the rate of fire is up to 1,000 rounds per minute, and the turret is operated by 2 crew members inside the vehicle. The cannon uses a head ammunition, which creates a cloud of submunitions in front of the target, allowing it to reliably destroy drones and small aerial objects. The Sky Ranger 30 is a lighter version with a 30mm cannon and short-range missiles. This version has an engagement range of up to 3 kilometers and a rate of fire of up to 1,200 rounds per minute. Both versions are equipped with a sensor system including radar, an infrared camera and a laser rangefinder, and are also capable of automatic target tracking, providing reliable protection of territory from aerial threats. Now, every enemy attack will receive an instant and precise response, and the defense of Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure will reach a new level. The Ukrainian sky will truly become impenetrable.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. And now is the time to subscribe, like the video and share it, so more people can see the truth. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. Over the last day, Russia lost at least 990 troops killed and wounded. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, that's already 1,091,000 soldiers. In addition, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 3 Russian tanks, 1 armored vehicles, 29 artillery systems and dozens of other enemy assets. Some Russians die for money and imperial fantasies. Others make money of war, grabbing state contracts to feed the army of occupiers. More in the story.
In Russia, it seems that food for the army and gravel for railway tracks have something in common. Vladimir Solovyov,
the formidable Russian bear, known for its aggressive nature, attacks without any prior warning or indication. And it's hard to stop him.
More precisely, the associates of propagandist Solovyov turned out to be not only masters of television imagery, but also owners of billion-ruble government contracts. We're talking about the producer of the country's chief propagandist, Margarita Zhitnitskaya, and her partner Vardan Akhnazarov. But interestingly, there is almost no information about them on the internet.
Usually people of this kind remain in the shadows. Because it's only when some diligent investigative journalists start digging deeply that they uncover some hidden wallets, some specific people, and then we more or less learn some significant names and their connections.
These 2 figures became key players in companies connected to government contracts and the supply of food and materials for the military and Russian railways. But you might wonder, what does Prigozhin have to do with this?
I want to point out that this is not the NAB scheme we're all familiar with. The now late Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin. It's true, he started out as a food supplier to various places, including schools. There was hardly anywhere he didn't supply food to. But at the same time, he had a large number of media projects, almost simultaneously. So he made money from supplying goods and invested that money into media projects.
In other words, it's a kind of money laundering scheme, but under the guise of doing good deeds and helping the army.
I truly believe this is precisely the same kind of elaborate scheme, a sort of clandestine shadow financing originating from the state, one might accurately say. That is, they don't invest direct budget funds into this, right? Well, apparently because these are all things like popular YouTube channels and so on. They simply cannot invest direct budget funds into this particular endeavor, but they do allow the significant opportunity to receive indirect financial funding.
It turns out that after Prigozhin's death, the company RBE, where 30% of the shares belong to a certain Akhnazarov, received all the Ministry of Defense contracts. Again.
Let's take someone like Solovyov, for example. Right now, we're primarily talking about him. He needs money to develop his projects. Well, he actually earns quite a bit himself. A lot. If he's making money from this too, you want to ask, isn't his face going to burst from all that cash? But nevertheless, he needs some trusted people to handle this for him.
It would seem they're just feeding him and supplying materials. Although, if you look closer, they're actually feeding themselves pretty well too. For example, in 2024, the company's revenue amounted to 77 billion rubles.
But we're talking about a money laundering operation here, about how these companies are set up specifically to have already laundered money, so that no one has to say that budget funds are being invested here or there, so that nobody comes running and says it's illegal. This way, we have huge amounts of already laundered money that can either be spent on personal enrichment or invested in something useful for Putin's gang. And it's into these useful things for Putin's gang that they will invest.
But how do they manage to rake in so much money just by selling food?
With Russian railways, you can just take a look. There, everything is even simpler. In Russian railways, if we're talking, for example, about meals included in the ticket price, you can just see for yourself the outrageous amounts they charge for it. And this pathetic little set they hand you costs more than a meal at a good restaurant.
But why does the Kremlin need so much money, billions of rubles? But it's simple. After all, they really do have plenty of ways to spend it.
Just look at the nightmare that's happening in Moldova right now. What's going on there? They're exposing fake accounts by the dozens, all trying to influence the election campaign in Moldova. To finance all of this, you need cash. Or crypto or something else like that. He flew there to get it. That's exactly why the Kremlin needs these kinds of laundromats for their secret operations.
Who gets sent to die and who just profits from all this?
The main hawks, the main supporters of the war, they're the ones making the most money. But still, let's take this into account. This particular circumstance. I was talking about the campaign in Moldova. Who's overseeing it? In fact, this campaign is being personally overseen. Sergei Kirienko. So they did arrive and not only put it in their pockets, of course, they put it in their pockets too, but they also use it to further advance these Putinist imperial narratives.
It turns out that those who shout the loudest about patriotism and serving their beloved Putin are actually the ones making the most money from the war.
And here's Dmitry the alcoholic Medvedev's autumn meltdown. He accused Finland of plotting an attack on Russia. And now he's claiming that unfriendly countries are waging biological warfare against Russia by bringing in foreign microorganisms. Details ahead.
Finland is preparing a staging ground for an attack on the Russian Federation. This was written by the Russian politician and alcoholic Dmitry Medvedev in a column for the propagandist at TASS, accusing Finnish President Alexander Stubb of pushing the country toward military conflict.
Russia understands that above all, it is feared because of its unpredictability. Accordingly, it is necessary to publicly shine a light on the most inadequate representatives. That's precisely why we very often hear prominent statements and public pronouncements from figures like Kadyrov and Medvedev, because these very specific and influential figures have been explicitly assigned the crucial role within the intricate Russian power system of acting as blunt, unyielding instruments.
Medvedev claims that Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia, and as Medvedev sees it, is preparing a springboard for an attack on his country.
First of all, a joke comes to mind. Does he mean the country, or is it a bottle of vodka that wants to attack him? But jokes aside, it is important to note that Finland, a Nordic country in Northern Europe, shares a very significant 1,273-kilometer-long land border with its eastern neighbor Russia. And this does not even count the extensive maritime border, which also exists along the vast and historically important Baltic Sea. Plus, Finland is a NATO country, It's also worth noting that Finland had no intention of joining NATO until Russia's aggression against Ukraine.
The former president of Russia has found an ally in Finland, the NATO alliance, which is allegedly fully involved in these matters and is now actively mastering land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. Thus, according to Medvedev, right next to the Russian border, a command structure for the alliance's forward land forces is being established, and their numbers could be increased to a full brigade of 5,000 troops. The report also mentions the deployment of a NATO regional land forces command headquarters in the city of Mikkeli, as well as the establishment of a new garrison in the settlement of Ivalo, which is located 40 kilometers from the Russian border.
Russia wants to restore not even the Soviet Union, but to establish the Russian Empire. That is why it views Finland as part of the Russian Empire. It views the Baltic countries as parts of the Soviet Union, of the Russian Empire. It even sees Poland as a possible component, so to speak, of Russian greatness.
But Dmitry Medvedev's imagination and statements did not end there. He continued to look for enemies of Russia abroad. It turns out that Russia's enemies are fighting not only with physical weapons, but also with biological ones, bringing into Russia alien species of plants, animals, and microorganisms.
You always have to come up with something. Before, they made up the dirty bomb. Now it's some kind of biolabs. There weren't any laboratories before, and now they're bringing up this topic again. In other words, it's all to keep society in a constant state of tension with this sense of threat from the West. And no one cares that none of this actually exists in reality. The main thing is to talk about it, to say that this is what we're afraid of. That's what they dream about. All they think about is how to seize our rich Russia.
Medvedev noted that the spread of imported organisms leads to pandemics, allergies, the death of animals, crop losses, a reduction in forest and hunting resources, and also causes economic damage. Therefore, this issue requires careful attention from the government.
Finally, the crime that shocked both Ukraine and the US. A young Ukrainian refugee was murdered by an American repeat offender, right in a subway car, under the CCTV camera. The story next.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The photo of 23-year-old Ukrainian Irina Zarutskaya, who died in the US, is being shown on all American TV channels. The murder happened back at the end of August, but only now. North Carolina police have released shocking footage from the subway. The young woman entered the subway car and sat down in front of a man in red. She was simply looking at her phone, unaware that just a few minutes later he would stab her several times. After killing the young woman, the man walked to the other end of the subway car. Drops of blood were left on the floor of the train after him. Passengers looked on in confusion and stepped over the bloody trail. The refugee from Ukraine, who had fled to the US to escape the war, died at the scene. Police detained 34-year-old D, Carlos Brown Jr., whose criminal record dates back to the 2000s. 14.
Court documents show that he spent more than 10 years in the criminal justice system. He had 14 prior cases in Mecklenburg County, including a 5-year sentence for armed robbery. His mother told local television that earlier this year she tried to have her son involuntarily committed to a psychiatric clinic. This was after he began behaving aggressively at home. Doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia. Court documents also show that since 2011, Brown has faced charges of making threats, petty theft, and grand larceny, although some of these cases were later dismissed.
Interestingly, just this January, Brown was arrested after repeatedly calling 911. In one of the 911 calls from the hospital, he claimed that people were trying to control him. The judge released him without bail. He was given a written promise to appear in court. And while local media discussed the murder of the refugee from Kyiv, wondering whether women are now afraid to ride the subway, and while giving advice not to sit with your back to others and not to listen to music, politicians are exploiting the death of the Ukrainian woman.
There are evil people and we have to deal with it. If we don't deal with it, we won't have a country. And I have created the first ever Department of Justice task force to eradicate anti-Christian prejudice. And among those people who are a bit naive and not very well read, there is a tremendous anti-Christian bias. We haven't heard about it, we don't think about it. You hear about anti-Semitism, but you don't hear about anti-Christian sentiment. We have a strong anti-Christian bias, but we will put an end to it quickly. I would say that today we live in a completely different world than we did a year ago. It seems almost perfect.
Trump drew a parallel between Irina's murder and the threats made against him to deploy federal agents and National Guard troops to Chicago and other Democrat-run cities. This episode, as never before, plays right into the hands of the 47th president and his attempts to establish new order in America. Other MAGA supporters also spoke out with rhetoric similar to their leaders. A similar case, where politicians exploited the tragedies of Ukrainian refugees, happened recently in Germany as well. For example, the far-right party seized on the murder of a 14-year-old girl from Mariupol by an Iraqi citizen who was supposed to be deported but wasn't. This case allowed the AfD to once again accuse the authorities of incompetence and stoke public sentiment.
My condolences to the family and friends of Irina Zarutska. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. See you next time.